Welcome back, everyone. If you're just catching us from our most recent episode, that would have been a bonus one. Us breaking down the blockbuster, Mikko Rantanen, Marty Necas, Colorado, Carolina swap of star players. Chicago is in there too, just for facilitating some cap reasons. We'll touch on their part in that a little bit. But kind of how are we feeling on this trade now, guys? That we touched on a bit on the weekend there when it happened and we discussed it. Like, still felt, Trav, you said it a lot, still felt kind of surreal that it even happened at all. So, kind of had the weekend, 3 games. What's the thought process and feelings on the new look Avalanche here without Rantanen?
Yeah, it's definitely settled in a bit more now. I think um the one thing that somebody said to me was because it happened on a Friday night. Um like nobody certain podcasts and stuff that run through the week didn't get to it until Monday. So at the start of this week I listened into the 32 Thoughts podcast and Elliot Freeman giving his word on it, and then I listened to the Kipper and Bourne podcast and their kind of breakdown of it. Um, it's been a couple days now. They've both played a couple games with their new teams. It's starting to set in now. Um, that the deal is done and Rantanen's no longer an Av, but um moving forward, I think it's been a great start really for both guys. Nate Schisch has 4 assists in 3 games. Jack Drury has 2 goals, which is I think quite more than you were maybe expecting from him. Rantanen got his first apple in Carolina. Um Again, it's really early on in the deal, but this could be one where it's sort of like the Kemper and Dubois trade where really it's just kind of gone. Um, it's been like very positive for both sides, very uplifting, I guess, for both sides. It's early to say that, but I mean, right now all signs kind of maybe point a little in that direction that this could work out for both teams.
Yeah, I think to add there, Justin. We were talking before we got on here, just the different stylistics that Nakash brings compared to what Rantanen did with Colorado.
Yeah, after watching the 3 games that he's been in with the Avs this week, it's a huge difference compared to what Rantanen brings on McKinnon's wing. Like, obviously, not the pure goal scoring type, but he kind of drives play a bit more himself. Like you kind of brought up that Rantanen didn't really do that without McKinnon, and he's such a he's like, I think Travis said he's like a unique style of skater, but he moves so fast out there. He moves around the offensive zone pretty smoothly and gets a lot of loose pucks. I don't think we really saw Rantanen get unless he was on the boards to get them. So, and he's been involved in the power play, like bringing the puck in and kind of moving around, like not just staying in one spot. He's kind of getting more comfortable. Would like to see him and a lot of the guys on the top line shoot more, but I think that'll come eventually. It's been kind of hesitant all year, but yeah, the only shock I had was in it like that Friday, Saturday, and now that it's kind of all just settled and games have been played, like I really have no feelings one way or the other on this trade. I just want to see how it plays out. I like it for Colorado. They did what they had to do. Um, I just want to bring in one final thing that I've been seeing online and on podcasts and stuff a lot is people trying to, you know, not blame McKinnon, but be like, you can't pay him more than McKinnon, or you have to ask McKinnon if he can get paid more. And this kind of became a huge talking point, and I didn't really like it because it's not really true at all. and if you believe what McFarland was saying, like for one, you have to pay Makar. We said that he gets whatever he wants. Then you're looking at having 3 guys with like 12 to 14, $15 million. Like that's way too much when your team needs depth. And that was the big point of this whole trade. They got that. They got 2 forwards for 1 plus cap space to go do something else. So I don't think McKinnon really cares what guys on his team gets paid. He just wants to play with good players and he wants to win. I don't think any of that bothers him. It's just that talk this whole week is, almost gives me a headache listening to it because it just, I don't know, as someone that follows this team very closely, it just really doesn't seem like the correct analysis of kind of what's going on.
Anyone that follows hockey and really and actually follows how McKinnon's just style is on and off the ice, he's very focused and kind of win at all cost type player. He just wants to win. And yeah, he's not the type of guy that's going to care if his teammates making $2 million more than him or whatever. But the point of you brought up with McFarland of, yeah, they're consciously making the decision here of, for at least probably the next half decade, they're not going to have more than 2 guys make over 10 million because Makar's going to get 15 million, whatever, when he's up because of the huge spike in the cap here. And McFarland's basically going to say Necas probably, if his extension comes in around 9.5, I'd imagine, if he's continues kind of on what he's been this year. And I feel Colorado's comfortable paying that. And you just start filling in the rest of your top 6 starts being $7-8 million guys because you have the cap space to pay guys like that. You're not boat anchored to 3 guys that are in double digits cap hits. So we've seen that in Toronto. It doesn't work when you have too many guys making double digits and eating up almost half of your cap space. It just your depth goes away. You rely so much on guys having breakout years. So another thing I want to go back to the power play that you mentioned there, Justin, Necas. Does him coming into just almost once everyone gets settled in, does his speed tied in with Makar and McKinnon skating and their speed on the power play make them off the rush on the power play so dangerous? Because before it was always Makar skates up, he's either going to skate it in himself or he's dropping to McKinnon. That's the only place there is. Whereas now you can almost line it up that you have a triple threat of either Makar skating it through you, McKinnon's going to just bulldoze through you because he's a fucking bull in a china shop, or Necas is going to dance through you because he's going to pick up the puck in his own zone with a head of speed. So I just feel like once these guys get settled in, the speed and just the creativity on the Avs power play is going to be so dynamic and fun to watch. But again, there's such a unique stylistic difference that guys are just going to have to get used to.
I think in theory, that's exactly what you said there, Brock. That's how it should be. The only flip side of that coin is I can also see that being kind of a too many cooks in the kitchen sort of deal too, where I can see that all 3 of them are trying to use their speed and scale so much that there's a disconnect with each other, and it doesn't appear that way too much so far. Again, it's so early on, but the one thing, and don't get me wrong, Necas can shoot the puck, but the one thing that Rantanen did bring was he was kind of the trigger man on that power play. I can just tell watching Necas that he has kind of a pass first mentality, and I think they will get there. They will kind of figure out the system. I think the Avs power play is going to kind of change a little bit with him in there. I think it's going to be kind of stylistically, it's going to look a little different than with Rantanen there, the way that that McKinnon and Rantanen kind of set up. But I think they will eventually kind of figure out, maybe not so much a trigger man, but they'll figure out how to utilize each other to get the shot kind of through the seam.
Yeah, like there's not one set play anymore. And maybe it is they go back to kind of that set. McKinnon's on that left circle ready for his bomb, but you have him, Makar and Necas doing their thing that can just feather pucks through and have seeing eye shots through. Like we've seen Makar score how many goals that way. Another thing on the power play, what's your guys' overall thoughts on the chances of them maybe breaking up into two more even power play units at all? Or like kind of do a hybrid where you have Makar McKinnon play almost the full 2 minutes of a power play and you just swap out. So Necas doesn't necessarily start with a top line. You start it with Mac and Rantanen, or Mac and Makar quarterbacking the whole thing. And then towards the end, you bring Necas out. And depending on how many like clears and like face-offs, frozen pucks there are, you might get Necas out with dead tired penalty killers, but it also keeps him fresh for getting him out right once the power play's ended too, a little more, because then he's fresh and eager to go because he didn't get that PP time. It's just something like, I know you listen to a lot of Toronto fans and you listen to like a lot of other teams that can load up one power play unit that struggles. There's always the talk of how should we break it up here? Should we kind of make two even units?
It's not the worst idea. Especially right now, their power play I think is last 2 for 33 or 2 for 34. I really think they're missing a big body in front of the net, which was Val before it was Landy. They don't have that, and the one thing they really don't have right now is McKinnon shooting the puck. He just seems so hesitant. I don't know why. He always does the fake clapper and then looks to pass, but before he used to just wire that thing in. And whatever kind of they need to do to get him shooting again, which they need now because they don't have that, shooter first mentality that Rantanen always kind of owned for them. So anything to kind of, like anything to get this kind of team going, I'm down for any sort of like juggling or like different sort of power play, theories on how this can get going.
Yeah. You got anything to add on that, Trav? Or?
No, not really. I same as JC. I like the idea of it. I don't really have a lot on it.
Yeah. All right. I will. I do want to get some of our opinions on like maybe what else is coming with Colorado, because we kind of touched on it in our bonus video there, breaking down this trade, that Colorado freed up cap space and that they're likely going to get more moves. But we're going to save that for a later video here. We got 5 weeks, I think, till trade deadline anyway. We'll kind of dig deeper on that, kind of get moving. We are going to go through the whole Central Division, kind of mid-season review. Kind of the forgotten part in this whole trade between Colorado and Carolina was the Chicago Blackhawks, who traded Taylor Hall to Carolina. They got a third-round draft pick back in exchange, but they also ate part of Rantanen's contract, which made the money work all around. I guess it's more just like, are they handling this rebuild correctly, the Blackhawks? Because like they came out late, like you heard the reports later of Bedard was kind of unhappy that Hall left because he was really close with, like he felt close with Hall. He went to Hall with a lot of issues or concerns about stuff and how to handle things. And if you're management and you know that, I don't care whether you can get a decent draft pick or not. Connor Bedard is your franchise right now. You kind of have to make sure he's comfortable and happy. And you just traded away probably one of the top guys that made him comfortable and happy in the locker room.
Yeah, to answer your first question, no. Honestly, I don't really know even where to start with the Blackhawks. I don't know what direction they're trying to head in. I realize that they're in a massive rebuild. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that they are probably half a decade away from the playoffs, at least at this point in time. Which it's a shame for Connor Bedard. He's not going to see the postseason until he's entering his prime, or halfway through his prime, more than likely. But yeah, I just don't. There was maybe after free agency last year, it looked like they were kind of trying to get back on their feet. They signed a couple of veteran guys into Chicago to kind of put around Bedard. And then, I don't know, they move Hall out. They brought in Bertuzzi. He's been awful. He's been less than stellar, to say the least, this year. I had some chemistry with Teuvo Teravainen at the start of the season, and then Teravainen went pretty cold there. I don't know. At this point, I'm just rambling, but it's just there's no direction right now. And it's and I said this to you guys in the chat, it's people are pinpointing Bedard as not being a bust, but not living up to the hype. But he's in a ghost town. He's got nobody around him, and no direction with the team. At the very least, guys like McDavid and McKinnon had some sort of direction with the team, even if they weren't, or it took them a couple of years to get there. There was a lot of young guys in Edmonton when McDavid was kind of coming up, and same with McKinnon too. Landy was pretty young then. Rantanen was really young. Makar hadn't even stepped in until the Avs were already good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It with Chicago, it's just I don't even know.
It's almost I know there's so many people that deny this, but it's just a situation where it feels like the NHL did rig the 2023 draft lottery to help Chicago get Bedard. And part of that is because almost like kind of how they did with 2020, how the Rangers jumped up from the 11th overall pick to first overall pick because of the lottery. There's just certain markets in the NHL, especially in the US, that the league wants to make sure aren't terrible for long stretches. And so the unfortunate thing here is, though, Chicago didn't even really start to bottom out, but when they won that lottery, they were just bad because they had that bubble playoff win over Edmonton, and they kind of had false hope, maybe we can still make one last run with Taves and Kane and Keith here and all that. Yeah, that's not going to fucking work. Everyone was old. Injuries were starting to creep in. Taves had to take a year off because of complications and everything. And it's just, like you said, Trav, Bedard comes in, and it's a ghost town there because they're still in the midst of having to just piece together a roster each year while they continue to just stockpile their future. And unfortunately, they got Bedard, and that should immediately say, okay, the future's now, but they can't do that because they were good for so long. Their future was so desert and barren. By the time they needed to start stockpiling futures, they just they got their generational talent, but they were not ready for anything to do with it. It sucks for Bedard because it kind of gives off like Mario Lemieux vibes back in the early 80s when he first got drafted, because the Pens were so shit even with him. And they eventually turned it around because, again, great players like Bedard, like Lemieux, they're going to slowly attract great players. It's going to take longer than probably what most people thought for Bedard to truly shine in this league because he just has no one. On that point, though, there has been rumors. Justin, what do you think of this one of Chicago maybe taking a big run at Rantanen should he hit the open market? Like, Rantanen might be back in the Central before we know it here.
Yeah, I've been reading those same ones too. I mean, he's already their third highest paid forward right now, so like he might as well become the first next year. Don't really have too many thoughts on it. Like if if that's what Rantanen wants to do, he wants to be paid like Draisaitl from whatever reports, whether how true those are or aren't. I'm glad the Avs never once considered doing that because he is not Leon Draisaitl. I also heard that they might take a big swing at Marner too if he hits free agency. Like they have these plans in mind to like possibly help Bedard. It's just these are also like they're not concrete plans at all by any means. It's just like let's just hope they get to free agency and let's just hope that they will be willing to at least entertain our offer and then sign it. They're definitely going to have the capabilities of signing both of those guys to 13-14 million dollars, maybe go up above, but and that's the thing that this team has to do. This is how they're going to have to get Bedard, going, like get him noticeable, get this team kind of back into relevancy if that's what they want to do. Because if you're looking at all their prospects and stuff, a lot of them are still going to be some time away if they ever become anything. That's the problem with prospects. So I like it. I like the idea for Chicago to do that, but it's, there's so many things that have to happen for them to, be able to actually get that done.
You started with the prospects, like their top ones are still probably another season away from being any type of impactful NHL players. So let's move on to the St. Louis Blues here, guys. At times this season, they've kind of looked like a dark horse team that could challenge for a wild card and maybe like surprise people in terms of a playoff appearance and all that. And at other times, they've just straight out looked bad. Like, what's your guys' just overall thoughts on the Blues here? Because like they're a team that just no one really knows about right now, and they just recently placed Brendan Saad on waivers. They almost seem like they're kind of stuck in purgatory. I don't know what you guys think on this.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're just extremely mid right now. They do have some respectable caliber players over there, but it's I don't know. I'm not gonna pinpoint anything specific, but there's just a lot of gaping holes throughout their lineup and their play too, which is why they are where they are. The Jim Montgomery, the Montgomery experiment kind of has gone exactly how I thought it would. I figured he'd come in and they'd play good under him for a little bit, which they did, and then kind of reality set back in, and they just kind of fell back to being the middle of the road team that they are, not good enough for playoffs, but not in the basement either. So Yeah, they're one team this year that's pretty well sat all season exactly where I expected them to be.
Yeah, I think we all kind of had them in that kind of 6-ish spot in the Central, 5-6. So, like, Justin, is this one where the St. Louis maybe need to take a hard look at some of their player, like key guys, and think, is it time to move off? Because they have a half decent prospect pool coming up, but there's still another season or two from those guys being here. Is it one where maybe like kind of like Chicago where they have to, and where you don't want to get to Chicago's level of holding on too long, maybe start thinking about the future and maybe considering a guy like Kyrou to trade off for a good, strong future pieces, whether it's draft picks or whether it's a 20-year-old or 21-year-old that's right on the cusp of being being an NHL player.
I think it's probably something you always have to consider, especially with you're paying a guy 8.1, and along with Thomas, and Thomas is almost at a point a game this year. Kyrou, I would say, has maybe underperformed a little bit for his kind of number, but they're I like what they've been trying to do since the end of last season, like going out and getting those two young guys from the Oilers, because Holloway's been great for them. He's kind of been exactly everything that you wanted. They started to get younger on defense by bringing in Broberg, but then they go out and sign Suter. They trade for Cam Fowler, and kind of makes you go like, what are they kind of doing here? Because bringing in a Fowler is more of a move of a team. It's just like bringing in a good veteran guy, like it kind of seems like more of like a playoff run move, not kind of where the Blues are at right now. And now they're buying out Brandon Saad. They've mutually agreed on a contract termination. He's not playing up to what he is. So that clears up more space for them. Will likely make them younger with the corresponding move that comes in. I just wonder what they're doing with almost $5 million that they're going to free up here. If they try to go after another young guy that might be available, because right now this team, they're probably not going to make a run this year unless they go on like a Nashville style kind of tear, which I don't see. Binnington's, I don't think, good enough right now to kind of do that for them, and I don't think they generate enough offense either, even with the change in coaching styles. I don't know about trading Kyrou or Thomas, but I think at some point, if this doesn't work out, if they're in the same position next year at this time, I would very much consider it, because they're 25 years old, 25, 26 years old. I still kind of wonder about getting rid of somebody at that age, unless it's kind of a 1-for-1 deal where you kind of bring someone back like that, like what the Avs just did.
That's and it's maybe one where it's not necessarily trading them this year or even this summer. It's because both guys are signed till 2031. Buchnevich is the only other forward signed to that length too. And after those three, like Braden Shen's the only forward signed past the 26-27 season. So there is going to be coming a turnover in St. Louis. But I just wonder if Doug Armstrong has maybe started conversations around the league of, in a year's time, in 2 years' time, when you have the Otto Stenbergs and the Dalibor Dvorskys coming into their own in the league more, maybe it is like Kyrou passes the torch more to them, and Armstrong sees what other holes he can fill by moving off of Kyrou. The Blues to me are just going to be, they're such a curious team in terms of they have guys that are at the level and like built to win now, but the rest of their overall roster is just not good enough. So It's one Doug Armstrong's going to have to make a call here within the next 2 seasons, I'd say, to truly say, okay, we either need to do a retool before we just completely shit the bed, or I got to sell these young up and coming prospects for legit NHL players that are going to help us now. I think it's just going to be fun to watch what happens in St. Louis over the next few years in terms of how they handle all this. The action is ramping up for the NFL playoffs. You can get on this action at Draftkings, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NFL. Scoring big matters most in the playoffs, and with Draftkings, you can score big too. Bet on game lines, passing or receiving props, or a simple TD score. It's easy. Go to Draftkings app, choose your game, and select who you think will score a touchdown. Be the first scorer, or have multiple TDs. Plus, if you're a first-time customer, there's a bonus. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when they bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Maybe another team right along with St. Louis has been Utah, kind of middling around, and we kind of expected this from them too. Maybe expected them to be a little more consistent, but I think they kind of had the big injuries with Drury and Sergachev early on that season, hurt their blue line depth. Is the bigger news though in Utah maybe the news that just broke here yesterday and today? They're finally going to pick a team name.
I guess in a weird roundabout way, yes. I mean, I don't know if if you're a Utah fan, well, I mean that's probably even their main focus. But if I'm a fan of the team, I wouldn't want my most exciting part to be what the team name's going to be. I'm thinking about what they can do to kind of get themselves closer to the playoffs or knocking on the door kind of deal. They are currently only 6 points out of the playoffs right now, with games even with Vancouver. So they are actually not far off. But like you said there, Brock, they've just been inconsistent at times. There's a lot of good young guys over there. I think I picked Utah to make the wild card this year, in our season preview episode, and I think they are going to get there. I think there's I really like the group of guys that they have over there. It's just a matter of them kind of growing together with experience to kind of get over the hump to get into the playoffs. But just going back, I mean, the team name thing is, I don't know. Yeah, if that's the focal point of your, your worries right now, that's, I don't know, Ed in a different space, I guess.
Is that just it, Justin? Where is it one that they do have a good young group there? You have Keller's kind of leading everything. You have a Cooley, you have a Gunther, you have some the more depth middle six guys of a McBain, a Krause, a Barrett Hayton. You have guys like that. Is it maybe one where Bill Armstrong just kind of wants to let everybody settle in to the new city before making any big changes to this roster? There's been these players have had to go through quite a bit in the last calendar year, that just to try to really revamp this roster mid-season might be a little too much for them.
It is quite a bit to go through, it seems like, for them. I don't know if that has a lot to do with it, but I do think probably if they do some heavy lifting probably will not be till, the end of the year. I think, they made a few kind of acquisitions that even this off season, especially on the back end, which, I kind of like both those moves for them, bringing in Sergachev and Marino. I think honestly, their next focal point needs to be at the center position. I like Logan Cooley. He's still pretty young and raw. Like, he's showing out good, but I think, they're kind of missing a guy that can have that 1-2 punch with him. And, when you have wingers like, Keller and Gunther and, two guys that have been playing really well this year. Gunther got hurt, which is unfortunate, but Keller's way above a point a game. He's kind of taken that role of captain too, pretty well. I'd like to see this team kind of make a big move probably this offseason like that. And also like, going back to name point and like that kind of being a big focal point of this whole franchise. Like, I kind of get what Trav's saying, but also like, it's a lot better to be talking about this team as like a legit NHL team playing in a legit NHL arena with, a legit owner that makes money, and they're just not piddling away in some college rink in Arizona, always wondering like if they're going to move or what the next kind of plan is with the Coyotes franchise. That how long did that linger for? A decade or more? Like, oh, we're switching towns, we're switching arenas. Like, it's nice to have stability within with all 32 teams in this sort of sense. Like, it's kind of not like a joke, but yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. I'm really interested to see what they do with this team name too. I think it's kind of cool that they're letting the next, 4 or 5 games of fans vote, and I think that's what they're going with. So, they're really open with like the fans community, getting them involved. So I kind of like that aspect of it. And, I think Outlaws is the way to go. I think it was Mammoth until they put Outlaws on the table.
Yeah, I think we're all unanimous that Outlaws should be the name, maybe. But you got anything to add there, Trav?
Just kind of an off note, and this can be sort of a topic for another day, but just something that, we mentioned Clayton Keller a couple times, and I've kind of been thinking recently, like, is he kind of maybe moving up the ranks for the most underrated player in the league? Or is he among the top, let's say 5 of most underrated player in the league? Like,
I think
I just started pondering that the other day, and then I was like, man, like, Clayton Keller has got to be up there. Like, he's had some rock star years the last couple of years, and he's having another one again this year. And like you said there, JC, like, the captain role he's seemed to ease into that pretty nicely. He's leading the way there in Utah, like, over a point per game. Like, I think he's quickly coming up as one of the most underrated players in the league right now, because nobody ever talks about him ever. And I think that's because he's over in Utah, but regardless.
Yeah, I think he's easily in that top 5 group. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Utah acted as a sneaky buyer this year at the deadline. Like, because there's so much uncertainty with some teams that Utah might just slip into some trades here where they get a pretty decent NHL player that maybe has a year or 2 left remaining on their contract and isn't just a rental. And that's kind of what they maybe need. So
I think that's the way they go for any sort of splash. They get someone with term.
Yeah. We kind of touched on, like, we talked about Chicago earlier. The other disappointment of this division, Nashville. I don't know if you guys have a whole lot on them other than just this year's a write-off, and they get to walk away with like 3 first-round picks now because of how the last few seasons have went for them. But it's pretty disappointing with how the Preds have kind of handled this year in terms of how their offseason went.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go as far to say as I thought they'd figure it out enough to climb, up the standings, but I thought they would, at least after their brutal start there this year, I thought they'd figure it out enough to maybe at least have a look at a wild card spot, and they haven't so much as done any of that this year. Like, they are far and away missing the playoffs. Like, there's no ands, if, or buts about that. I think everybody got that wrong. I think just about everybody that I heard or seen at the start of the year had the Preds as a top 3 as a Central team. So I guess nobody wins there, but
No.
but no, just I mean, yeah, like, disappointment. That's the biggest word to describe it. Yeah, I don't even really have a lot else, but
Yep. Justin?
No, I thought they'd eventually start turning it around this year. I know we've gone back to them a few times this year just to kind of be like, no, they haven't turned it around yet. And like, I think there's still 13, 14 points out of that second wild card. Like, you're at game. Most teams are within 50 games played this year. I think it's starting to get a little too far away, unless you go on a mammoth run. That's a lot to ask, like, to do that a couple years in a row, to do that consistently, especially with how tight all these teams are that are in the playoffs right now, and even the ones just on the outside. The parity in this league, which is great, by the way, I think just makes it too tough for many teams to make a big jump. So interested to see if and what they do at this deadline, because I don't really know how much there is for them in terms of getting rid of any guys. But yeah, I think this is one where Trotz has to go back to the drawing board in the offseason and kind of reconsider kind of the moves that he has made and see what he can do to tinker with this, because you're kind of stuck with this. So, it's kind of like a retool of a retool.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's honest. He's only been, he just got there, but this might be Barry Trotz's last summer if he doesn't fix this in the offseason. So switch over to try to speed these last few up. Switch over to a team that we kind of maybe had out of the playoffs, but are doing pretty good. The Minnesota Wild. How much of this is they're getting good goaltending again, something they didn't get last year, and they're just getting some timely scoring from players. Like, they don't have their all-star guys when it's not Kaprizov, but guys are just scoring those timely goals for them.
I think that's a large part of it. Yeah, like you said, Gustafsson kind of turned back the clock a little bit. He's once again the goaltender that he was 2 seasons ago. He's the goaltender that I thought he would be last year when I picked him as the Vezina winner, and that didn't work out. But I think Bill Guerin's got this team heading in the right direction. I think he's got a good mentality for what this group can become. There's a lot of good things to pick out from this team. But I think the biggest thing, and it's showing up lately, besides the injuries that they've had, and obviously missing Kaprizov is a huge hole on that team. But I think the biggest thing that's come to fruition in the last couple of weeks is maybe the inexperience of this team. Again, injuries are playing a significant part in them kind of slipping up in the Central a bit, but I think, yeah, the experience, the maybe almost luckiness of their start is kind of catching up with them. I don't think they'll slip up as much as to fall out of the playoffs. I think they will find a way to get there this year, but I don't see them going anywhere past the first round right now. But I think if you're a Wild fan, I think all you can really ask for this year is the playoffs. They had a pretty down year last year. For them to kind of rebound and get right back in this year is a promising turnaround. But I just, with the caliber of teams that are remaining in the Central that are in the playoffs, I just don't think that they're going anywhere this year. But a lot of good things to look forward to in the coming seasons here, I think.
Justin, how much of this year is predicated on just showing Kaprizov that there is a reason to stay in Minnesota?
I think that's a big part. They've got some very solid pieces like building around, like Gustafson's finally kind of back to where he was and where we kind of thought he was going to be. Faber, Boldy, a lot of like nice pieces that have kind of come in, and other than Kaprizov and kind of the emergence of Boldy, there's nobody really on this roster that fully sticks out to be like, wow, like, this guy is, like game breakers sort of thing, or just like need to tune into this Wild game to watch this guy. Like, that doesn't really happen too much, but they just seem like a resilient kind of tight knit group that can just string together good performances no matter kind of who is in the lineup or who is out of the lineup, which I think really helps them. Fleury's having a great year too, is kind of like he's 40 now or close to 40 in his last year. So I think that maybe has a lot to do with it too. Like, they kind of want to go on a run for his last year. And we all hear the stories of how great of a teammate that he is and keeps the locker room light and all this stuff. So I think like all these little minor things that don't show up on score sheets, analytic sheets, that kind of help make this team better than I really think they would be or kind of want them to be. But
yeah, they do almost seem like a team that just, you can't base it off strictly off numbers or that. There's even off the eye test. There's just so much behind the scenes driving this team.
Marco Rossi's really coming along too for the Wild this year.
Yeah, I don't remember which episode. It was earlier this season. I'm pretty sure it might have been our season preview. I pegged him that for the Wild to do anything, he would have had to kind of break out, and he's at least taking a half step to what he should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is nice to see, especially with what he went through during the pandemic and all that.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah. Lost two teams in this division, Winnipeg, Dallas. They're kind of just cruising along. Like, Dallas has found their groove. Both teams are cruising along in the regular season here. Is this just one where their season's going to be predicated based on how they do in playoffs?
I think if you're the Jets, for sure. I think we've gone over this quite a bit. I need to see it in the playoffs for them. Dallas, they've been to a few conference finals. They've been to the Stanley Cup final recently. They're the team, honestly, they're the team that probably scares me the most in the Central over the Winnipeg Jets, just for that reason, because they made it to the conference finals last year, got bested by the Oilers, but now like all those younger guys are going to be a year older. I'm worried about what the next little bit of a timeline is with Heiskanen, because he's out now week to week, I think, which I don't know, like, if you guys have any thoughts on what happened with him there. There's been a lot of hatred online towards Mark Stone. The way I saw it, he got tripped, and it's just a kind of a freak accident. You know how Mark Stone plays. He's very defensive, and he's always going for the puck. Hintz tripped him. That's how I saw it. I think it is what it is. But Wyatt Johnson, he's starting to light it up for the Stars. He's really turned it on since he's kind of had the weight lifted off his shoulders, I think, from this trying to make Team Canada sort of deal. And he's so good, man. I hate the Stars, but he's always fun to watch, like when they're playing.
Recently got an A on his sweater too. There's rumblings that he might be the next captain when Ben finally mails it in, which I found to be very interesting. But I could see it too. He plays with his heart on his sleeve, man. Actually, probably one of my favorite players in the league to watch right now. Just jumping over quick to the Stone incident. Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. And I'll be the first guy to say that I don't like Mark Stone. I've been vocal about that in the past. Not going to get into it, but I do think that was kind of just a fluky play. Unfortunate for the Stars and Finland at that. He's not playing in the Four Nations anymore. But yeah, just agree with everything you mentioned there, JC. I still firmly believe that Dallas is the number one team in this division. They've just done a really good job of complementing their veteran core as they've gotten older with the prospects that they've brought in and developed. Like top to bottom, they're just so solid, and they maybe don't have a bona fide game breaker, but that's kind of trumped with how they've filled out their lineup. I'm expecting them to have another big year in the playoffs. The Jets, again, and just beating the dead horse, but I just don't believe in anything really that they've done this season until the results show in the playoffs. I'm not behind the hype that everybody's put on them this year. The great season they're having. They're having a great year. Like Connor Scheifele at Hellebuck have been fucking brilliant, but it all means nothing to me. I think the Jets do win this division, and I'm not the least bit scared of them.
No. They definitely seem like the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Western Conference. But yeah, that Stone incident to me was, I kind of have a different view than what you guys have on Stone Heiskanen, because when you watch it, he was tripped. But then when I really kind of looked at it, it's one where he's tripped, and yet he's still, his upper body, and you watch his right leg of it, he still made a push to try to poke check the puck. Like you said, Justin, he's a sound defensive player. He really, he wants to help his team on every aspect of the game. But it just reminded me of almost kind of like how Matthew Tkachuk at times, or Brady Tkachuk, guys, Tom Wilson around the crease. It's that accidental, on purpose fall into the goalie. I got shoved slightly. He kind of took that liberty of, I got tripped, I lost my footing, but I'm not giving up on this play, whether it's a danger to the other players or not, is kind of how I saw it. It's unfortunate for Heiskanen that he's out. Hopefully he gets a speedy recovery because he's such an amazing player. But to me, it was one where it wasn't really, it's a play that as soon as Stone felt his left edge go, he should have just quit on the play. And because he could have also risked himself injury on that play too. It's just, to me, it's a play. As soon as you feel your feet go out from under you, just let the play die from your side. There's not, all you're doing is risking injury at that point. That's how I saw that play. But boys, got anything else to add here?
Yeah, just quickly, this useless tournament that's coming up: Crosby, Barkov, Hedman, and Matthews captains. Yeah. I don't know if there's really any real surprises there at all.
No,
other than Carlson getting the A.
Yeah. We can maybe we'll touch on that tournament here in a coming up episode as it gets closer and even gets underway. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Catch us next week. We'll go over the Atlantic Division as our final midseason review here, and then get back into everything else around the league. Four Nations is coming up. Trade deadline's approaching fast and quick, and we'll see what other blockbusters are out there. Thanks for tuning in to Snapping Around.